It was late morning, the city alive with footsteps and horns, people rushing with phones in hand, taxis cutting through lanes, voices blending into a restless hum, and in the middle of it all stood an old woman on the edge of the curb, her hands trembling on the strap of her worn handbag, her thin shoulders hunched against the push of strangers brushing past, her eyes darting at the blur of traffic like a prisoner staring at locked gates. She wanted to cross, but her legs refused. The cars didn't slow. No one stopped, and the world seemed too fast, too loud, too unkind. Drivers leaned out of their windows, shouting at her to move. Others rolled their eyes, impatient, as if her fear was an inconvenience to their day. A man even laughed, shaking his head. "If you can't cross, stay home," before speeding off. And for a moment it looked like she would be swallowed by the city's indifference, until a sharp whistle cut the air and turned heads. From the crowd stepped Daniel, a security guard in a faded uniform, boots scuffed from years of use, cap, tilted low face, weathered not from age but from long shifts where no one noticed him. A man most people passed by every single day without so much as a glance because to them he was invisible. Just the guard, nothing more. But in that moment he was the only one who moved, raising his hand as he walked into traffic, whistle blowing again, his stance firm, unshaken by honks or curses, his eyes calm as he faced down the impatient tide of machines. And then he turned to her, his voice steady, almost fatherly. "It's all right, ma'am. I've got you." She took his arm with shaky fingers, her steps small, and together they walked across as cars grumbled to a stop, her heart pounding with every step but his presence a shield, her fear softened by the quiet confidence in his stride, until at last they reached the other side, where she exhaled a breath that had been trapped in her chest, her eyes glistening as she whispered, "Thank you, son. Nobody else stopped for me." And he gave a gentle smile, one that reached his eyes. Everyone's in a hurry these days, but some things are worth slowing down for. And she looked at him for a moment longer, as if memorizing his face before she nodded and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, while Daniel turned back thinking little of it because for him kindness wasn't special. It was just what you did. Hours later, the lobby of the glass tower he guarded buzzed with tension. Employees adjusting ties, smoothing skirts, whispering about the arrival of the new CEO. Because today was the day she would take over, and everyone wanted to look sharp, to impress, to be seen. Daniel stood by the door as always, holding it open, nodding to people who rarely nodded back, his presence once again a piece of the background, forgotten. But when the sleek black car pulled up to the curb, when the chauffeur stepped out and opened the door, Daniel's breath caught because out stepped the very same old woman he had helped across the street that morning, only now she wasn't trembling, she wasn't overlooked. She was Margaret Hughes, the new CEO, her name carrying power that made people straighten their backs and force their best smiles. And yet her eyes found Daniel instantly, recognition lighting her face. The crowd swarmed to greet her, voices eager. "Welcome, Miss Hughes. We're honored." But she raised a hand, silencing the noise with ease, her voice calm yet commanding. "Before anything else, I want to acknowledge someone." And confusion rippled through the lobby, people glancing at one another, until she pointed toward the doors where Daniel stood stiff, unsure, her words sharp enough to cut through the murmurs. "That man. Daniel." Every head turned, whispers rising, some embarrassed, some shocked, because for years they had walked past him as if he were part of the furniture. And now the new CEO was singling him out, walking straight toward him with a smile that carried gratitude and gravity. "This morning, when no one else cared, Daniel stepped into the street and helped me safely across. He didn't know who I was. He had nothing to gain, and yet he showed courage and kindness, the kind most people overlook. That is what leadership looks like." Daniel felt heat rush to his cheeks, his throat tight, wishing the ground would swallow him. But Margaret wasn't finished, her voice firm, echoing in the marble hall. "From today forward, Daniel will no longer just guard doors. He will open new ones, for himself and for others." The room erupted, some clapping awkwardly, others with genuine admiration, and Daniel stood stunned, unable to process how his quiet act of kindness had just altered the course of his life. In the weeks that followed, the world shifted. Daniel wasn't left standing at the lobby anymore, Margaret called him into meetings, introduced him to teams, gave him responsibilities he never imagined, teaching him with patience, guiding him with trust, and each time she reminded him, "Kindness is not weakness, Daniel. It is strength, the kind too many people ignore." Slowly, the employees who once looked past him began to greet him properly, to ask his opinion, to treat him with respect he had never known. And yet Daniel never let it go to his head, never forgot the uniform he once wore, never stopped greeting the janitors and doormen with the same warmth he always had, because he knew titles didn't change who you were, they only revealed it. One night, long after the office had emptied, Daniel stood by the window of his new office, the city glowing with restless energy below, and Margaret joined him, her steps slower now, but her presence still unshakable, standing beside him in the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. And she said softly, "Funny, isn't it, how people think power comes from money or titles, when in truth real power comes from the choices you make when no one is watching." And Daniel, voice low, admitted, "I didn't do anything special, I just helped." And she looked at him with eyes that carried both wisdom and weariness, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "That's exactly what makes it special." And in that moment Daniel understood. He had never needed applause or recognition to matter. He had never needed a title to prove his worth. What made him powerful was the same thing that made him invisible for so long: his heart, his choice to do what was right even when no one cared. And that simple act of kindness, on a noisy street with a frightened stranger, had not only changed his life, it had reminded everyone watching that dignity doesn't come from status. It comes from how you treat others, and the smallest choice can echo louder than the grandest achievement. So remember this: the next time you think no one notices the little things you do, the next time you wonder if kindness matters in a world that moves too fast, know this truth: integrity shines brightest when no one is watching, and sometimes the act you think is forgotten becomes the story that changes everything.